welcome to episode 22. Check out what we have in store for you this week.
I'm going to post on my story the great food I had or the fun times I had. I'm not going to post when my wife and I got in an argument. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm not posting that. I'm crafting a story.
Radio is outdated. Like, you're going to tell me my media form is bad? Your media form is bad.
And in 5 seconds on Instagram, my wife creates a storyline using all of those.
Her stories are lit.
I use her as an example because, like...
It's us. We're back. It's me, William Illingworth, and Josh.
I'm here. Hello.
You there?
I made it.
Josh Swartz is with us.
Yeah.
You know, so he tries to get a nickname for me. I just call him Swartzy.
Yeah.
In fact, he's one of probably several friends who I've introduced to people before. Like, who's that guy over there? Oh, yeah, that's Swartz. Who? Josh.
Yeah.
That's right. That's his first name. Josh.
I am known as Swartz by most people. It's kind of odd. In multiple different friend groups, that just seems to be the thing that happens. Eventually, I become known as Swartz.
Do you mind?
No, I don't mind. I think
it's just that's what we call
I
him.
think like Josh. Just I think it's a boring name. It's not there's a lot of Joshes. Maybe that's why.
Thanks, Mom and Dad
thanks.
Swartz.
It was cool back in the 90s.
Boring name.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, welcome, folks. We're back for episode something or other. We are excited this evening to dig into some fun topics. Before we get to the meat of the evening, our fun question, our Will and Josh corner, I don't know.
I don't like the Will and Josh corner.
This yet?
We tried that. We tried that
stick.
last episode. Didn't stick. I feel like
it doesn't stand. Okay. The personality. Yeah, I got nothing.
Get to know Will and Josh.
So our fun question of the week is.
It is. What is your favorite superhero?
Boom.
Or who? What? That's weird. What object is your favorite superhero? I love pens. No. Who is your favorite superhero? That's our question.
For me, I am very much so. Even before Marvel TV shows and stuff and the movies or whatever, I've always been a Wolverine fan.
Oh,
like, it goes back for me. Like, that's first one. I've always loved his claws, his roughness, his healing.
Hugh Jackman.
Yeah. So when Hugh Jackman did it, I was just like, yeah, sold, done, forever. Wolverine will be my favorite superhero. He's just stuck with me. And of course, Batman, like, if I include DC, Batman might be a runner-up, just because he's like one that I've known for so long.
Yeah.
Batman's always been like a superhero
Yeah.
I've heard about. He had shows, he had comics and stuff that were pretty popular. Like, Aquaman didn't really get a TV show, right? Batman did. Yeah. Wolverine was in the X-Men TV show. That kind of stuff.
Aquaman did get a TV show. It was like, he was in a couple different ones. I just remember one that was like Aquaman and his friends or something. I don't remember the whole thing. That was like,
yeah, I got nothing.
Yeah, I don't know. Don't hold us to accurate evaluations of shows at this point. I don't know the other ones. Mine's super. I mean, I liked a lot of superheroes. I mean, I was, people, this may come as a surprise to you, but I'm a nerd. I know.
What?
I know. You've been listening to this podcast. You've been like, Josh is a jock. Yeah, he's like, he must play football all the time. No. So I liked a lot of superheroes, but mine has always been the classic Spider-Man. Okay? Like, I liked Wolverine. He was cool, but Spider-Man always got me. I don't know why. I think it was just like, he was a kid. He was a little nerdy.
Okay. Okay, and the humor.
He was sarcastic, which was absolutely what I
You're not sarcastic.
No, I'm not. I hate sarcasm. It hurts people.
You're just, it hurts people. That's why I wield it like Negan's bat.
No. So I don't know. I like Spider-Man. He was quippy. He was fun. And I liked Spider-Man's stories. Okay, like, he had good stories, in my opinion. There were a lot of good stories in comics, but he just had, I don't know, there was just like something about Spider-Man's storylines and the way that they portrayed him in the comics and the shows that I think I liked a little bit better. X-Men was cool, they had good stories, but they weren't Spider-Man. Which just, shows you, Will, that storytelling is an important thing,
Oh.
And comics, they have good storytelling. Don't you argue with me, listeners, okay? because if you say
I
they
didn't
don't,
see
you're
that
wrong.
coming.
They're good stories,
got me,
right?
folks.
Okay, and storytelling is important because it engages us, teaches us new information, engages creativity. This is where the transition falls apart. I didn't really have full ideas of how we got here.
No, that's
Yeah.
perfect though. Like he went for storytelling. This evening our conversation is about digital storytelling. This is kind of a field of study now. It's definitely something I've advocated for in a couple classrooms I've worked with and done some presentations on. I really like the idea. But Josh isn't wrong, right? Like, comics, a lot of people, I remember parents and stuff like that in my community saying like, oh, comics aren't stories. It's not the same as reading. Like read a book. It's like, yo, hey, hold on. Radio is outdated. Like you're gonna tell me my media form is bad? Your media form is bad. Man.
Oh yeah, you got them. Good job.
We podcast now. Who listens to radio? I love radio. Yeah, but the point being that comics have such great stories in them, and they're short form. They're not meant to be 600-page books. Like they're not the Lord of the Rings. They're not a Brandon Sanderson book, right? But comics do have series on series on series and hundreds of issues. So clearly they establish some pretty good stories. Now, digital storytelling in an academic sense comes out of a couple different movements. So we've got, of course, just generic storytelling. Like there has to be some narrative. If you're doing digital storytelling, one of the key things, if you think about it as a genre, is that there needs to be a beginning, middle, and end. There's got to be something that's happening. There are some folks who, if you're not talking about it as a genre, would actually include a lot of social media as digital storytelling. I might make the case that some social media has a story, right? Like literally Instagram calls some of their features stories, and all the other tools are picking up that feature. So if I think about like some of the people I follow on Instagram, they might start me at the beginning of their day, where they went for breakfast or what coffee they had, okay, like pretty benign things, right? But by the end of their story, I've followed them through to lunch, to that friend they saw in the park, to the movie they picked up for the evening, and then whatever was dinner and some dessert, right? So I do kind of get a story out of it. It just happens to be their life story. And I think it's just good to make that distinction early. Like there are some people who say that digital storytelling is a genre. It has to be a formal story. It needs to have some boundaries. And then there are folks that just say, well, digital storytelling is anything where you're telling a story in a digital medium. And that story can be explicit or it can be implicit, like Instagram or something like that. Now, I don't fall on one side or the other, but I do think it's worth kind of acknowledging that if you're going to consider using this as an academic purpose, if you want your students to be doing digital storytelling, you're either going to pick maybe a more formal sense and have some boundaries and some rules for them, or you'll make it more open and let them kind of do the story as they want. In either case, the number one goal of digital storytelling is definitely to have a personal voice. Like it's about your story. So you can tell the students to do it in a certain context or to aim the story at something, but they should be the ones telling it. It should be their voice or their video or their images, etc. And it should really kind of, I don't know, get the viewer involved in the person at hand. Do you have any kind of context of using this with your faculty, or have you done stories like this in your
we don't have at least a ton, I think, in our space where we've done it. Because it is I think a newer idea to our area. I think in general it's kind of a newer idea, but unfortunately when we talk about this, I don't have immediate great examples, other than what I would love to do in spaces with digital storytelling. Because I think the advantage of this idea, while I like the name and also hate it because it feels like a fatty education name. But I love the idea because it's just this concept of what does it look like to communicate well in a digital space, and to tell that type of story and get into that story. I think through those stories you learn about complex ideas in different ways. You communicate information. You learn to communicate well. I think we love stories. There's a reason we watch movies. There's a reason we read books. We like stories. They're engaging, and stories don't just have to be fun. They can be things that actually communicate things, or they learn from. For instance, when we first, I think it was introduced to this idea, and even looking at it, and even the tool that we'll talk about here today too, I've wanted for a little while to, like, I would love to implement an idea in like a counseling, or we have like pastoral counseling in our programs, like almost like this idea of what does it look like to like find a story of a person who you counsel and actually, anonymize it, do all that type of stuff, but actually do like a digital story form of that person's life, and what they've experienced. Wow. Like how differently could you communicate something about someone with video and images and text all combined together than just like here, talk about this case study in this paper. Like this, it's, those aren't both bad things. They're not against each other, but it's like, it's different, and you learn about things in a different way. And it's an important thing to learn how to do, because like you said, I don't just think we could call what happens in social media digital storytelling. I think it is. Like, it's in very many ways. People don't maybe necessarily think of that way, but they're intentionally creating a story about themselves, Like, I'm going to post on my story the great food I had or the fun times I had. I'm not going to post when my wife and I got in an argument. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not like I'm not posting that. I'm crafting a story. Like, that ability is a communication thing. I would love to see that happen in some places. I think we've seen some types of things where we do that, but not quite to the extent that some of the digital storytelling stuff has been happening. So I'm kind of in a space where like I'd like to see it happen more. We just haven't had the ability to do it yet.
Yeah. And I think that that's a really powerful example, Josh, to think of it in the context of like a counseling or like a persona, if you will. Like you said, anonymize or whatever. I'd almost rather see these digital storytelling examples put together like personas, like not actually John Smith's personal voice and telling of like what happened, went wrong with him, but like, why don't we tell a John Smith's story, right? For these people to be able to like hear and listen to a real human detailing the impact of physical or emotional or mental traumas. Again, we're taking this all in the counseling context of why a counselor would need to be able to hear that, interpret it, what a counselor might do with that to take notes and things like. There's a lot of skills that can go into using those kind of digital stories.
Even to that point, like, we're using like a counseling example, but immediately another example I'd love to see happen. Like, how many of those papers did you and I have to write? Okay, where it was like, here, give me 3 pages on the life of this person, right? Like, let's go back to our last episode, Martin Luther King. Give me, 5 papers on, the life and death of Martin Luther King, or in our context, it was like this theologian or this person, or Martin Luther. In this case, 2 very different people.
Protestant Reformation,
like this information, or in history class or whatever. Like this paper on this person. I'm not saying those things are bad, but like, what would it look like to take that concept and do a digital story? Like, actually create a digital story for that character. Like, obviously,
you're really connecting.
Obviously,
you're actually really connecting things for me though, Josh. Because when you said the last episode, I'm like, man, I think digital storytelling in the context that you're saying it is actually like a walking, talking wiki. You know what I mean? Like, if you're doing a really good digital story in this genre, following through with what Josh is suggesting, that if you did Abraham Lincoln, you'd need to nail the story. You'd need to be able to kind of pull all the information together. Maybe you take on a little bit of an accent or whatever to try and evoke the Abraham Lincoln-ness, whatever. Like, that's as far as I'm going. Right? But like, that would be the breadth of information you would need to put into the digital story to make it effective, to make it really resemble Abraham Lincoln, would be about as much information as you need to put into a wiki. So you could almost see these being connected learning activities where students would create a wiki and then later use that information to generate a story out of it.
And again,
something like that. I love those connections.
Again, it's going to look different than some of those more classic ways. And one of the struggles you're going to have is like, the way things are cited, like things like that. There's this digital storytelling has a different platform. But it's creative. I'm not saying like get rid of all your papers and do all digital storytelling. I'm saying like, how do we figure out how to implement this idea in 1 or 2 places? Right. Because it to me requires like engaging with the content in a different way, and thinking about how you communicate it better. in certain ways. And it's a skill that I think I don't like to get ton into this thing of where like, we're teaching these kids digital skills so they know how to, I just think it's like a skill that's learnable. It's like, how do we communicate?
It's not
stuff?
wrong.
Yeah, it's not wrong. Like, how
Right.
do we teach people how to communicate well? And in our day and age, some people do communicate well through just writing text.
And we have public speaking classes, and we have English 101.
Yeah.
Like I would almost love to see like digital public speaking or digital storytelling as like one of those 100 level courses. You're not wrong. Like, I'm actually really encouraged by you bringing that up and kind of making some of those connections myself. Like, some of the things that students have to do in public speaking are things that they should really be thinking about when they consider what they should post on their social media, or what they should be doing to kind of evoke their own voice in a digital context, like forums, Reddit, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat. These are places where the students are constantly generating content, but do they have necessarily the emotional skills and the kind of the mental experiences to help them determine what's safe or appropriate or kind even to be posting in those contexts, those venues? So their story, oftentimes, like Josh said, you don't post the argument that you had with your wife on digital storytelling or in social media, but you might put out your political opinion, which could be grating against someone else's, and it's okay to put out that opinion. But if you come at that from like a militant, us against them side, your story is less effective. You know when your story is more effective? When you're militant about it, when you say, you got to be X because I believe Y. Like, the people who believe you and like that story are the people who already believe you. You aren't changing any minds with that. And so there's something about the digital storytelling. Like, if you're trying to use it to change minds, you need to have the audience awareness of like, how do I tell this story so that even my opponent might think twice about their belief?
Ooh. Okay, now we're getting into a thing. Okay, anybody teaching speech, here's an idea. Take it or leave it. You're more of a traditionalist, you'll probably hate what we're saying, and it's fine. It goes exactly with what Will said already. So, what would it look like to have, it doesn't have to be a full course that does this, right? Like, what would it look like just to have a section, right? Where take a break from the traditional speech and talk about like creating a digital story, because you are creating a speech. You are, to your point, right? What does it look like to communicate in a digital format, and in this case, digital storytelling, telling a story through a digital format that is going to convince people of something? Because that story doesn't just have to be a story about a person. It could be a story about a thought or a idea. How do you communicate that well in a way that will actually convince people? Because in my mind, that's what I was trying to be taught about regular speeches, was how to convince people about certain things. That's a whole section, argumentative speeches. How do you bring that into digital storytelling? What does it look like to argue digitally? How do we communicate that well? Digital storytelling gives you a place to do that. And this is why why I make fun of the title. I don't think it's just a fad. And like, the technology's, yes, okay.
Right.
Instagram may disappear in years from now, okay? There may no longer be TikTok. Somebody could be listening to this in the year 2030, and right now they're laughing because we're basically talking about MySpace right now, okay?
Every app we've talked about is dead in 2030.
The digital platform, in my opinion, is not going anywhere, and we still need to know how to communicate well in it.
Yeah.
If you're trying to teach people how to argue well, you're trying to teach people how to process information well, and communicate it well, the digital environment's a whole other environment that they need to learn how to do that well. And that's not just always our traditional papers. It's not just always the way we do. I'm not saying get rid of those. I'm saying add this type of idea in there. How can we teach these skills as well? And I think digital storytelling provides an interesting way to do it, because it does do what digital spaces do. Text, images, media, it's pulling those things in. And in 5 seconds on Instagram, my wife creates a storyline using all of those. Okay? And that's a lot of people doing those things. So how do we do that well? Okay?
Her stories are lit, dude.
I use her as an example because like, we make fun of this, but I like never log on Instagram. I like look at people. That's all. I see how people's lives are going, and then I peace out. The most time I've interacted on Twitter is because we're on this podcast. That's literally my life. But I think digital storytelling is important and good to use. Now, the question you may be asking today is like, oh, this is great. Josh and Will, you idealists, you people. How do I do this? Because you just said media, images, text, whole bunch of things. Do I pull them onto Instagram? You could, and we'll talk about that in a different episode where we talk about how to use social media in education. But there's another tool that might spark your interest. Ooh, I'm getting good at this. I'm getting good at this, right? I feel like
it just takes some practice, dude. That's all it takes.
We're talking about a tool that Will and I have been familiar with for a while, actually. I think you were the one who got me onto it. It's called Adobe Spark. Now, you may not have ever heard the name Adobe before. I know that this may be new. Who's Adobe? No.
Oh, sorry. That was sarcasm. I didn't mean to be mean.
Sorry, it was being rude. If you like Spider-Man, you probably laughed. Adobe, though. Adobe Spark, this is a tool that the company Adobe made that, in my mind, I'm not sure. I don't know if they originally designed it for this type of idea of digital storytelling, but it's like, it's perfect for it. Like, it's the tool that I would recommend doing this.
I think it embodies, like, it's got a couple features, but its video feature embodies digital storytelling. It's like designed to do it.
Yeah, it's essentially like, well, actually, I'd ask you to break this down because you're a little bit more experienced with it than I am. If you 5-second elevator pitch, somebody asked you what was, 5 seconds was a little ridiculous. That's a fast elevator. Let's say like 2-minute elevator pitch. Somebody asked you, what's Adobe Spark? How would you describe Adobe Spark to someone?
All right, we'll see if I can actually do this in 2 minutes, right? So Adobe Spark is almost the entire... We both looked at clocks. Josh and I literally both looked down at clocks as I said that.
Okay.
It's an entire multimedia creation suite.
Ooh.
I think that's the best way I can put it quickly.
Fancy.
It has 3 main features. In Adobe Spark, you can create graphics, so images, infographics, things like that. It's in that way a little bit of a competitor to Canva. Sorry, Canva, we love you too. But it also has a pages or web page feature, so you can literally create a site that's at spark.adobe.com/gobbledygook, your site, but like you can link this out to other people, and that site can walk folks through anything that you want to create, right? It's a linear scroll down through. It doesn't have a lot of clicking. It's not a real website, but I think it's like a portfolio, or you might say you could create some exposés or something like that. It's a pretty cool tool just to have students be able to create some easy web pages. And then lastly is their video tool, which is a slide-based tool that requires that each slide be less than 30 seconds. So it's not trying to compete with your big video editing platforms. It's not trying to compete with YouTube. It's literally trying to get folks to condense a story into 30-second bites and, frankly, deliver what you'd imagine a digital story might be. It does have integrations to have like third-party media and images, stuff like that. It does have integrations for some background music for the videos. It can use embedded content on the pages like YouTube videos, etc. So it's really, frankly, robust. Like you get one login to access all of those different features. And frankly, if you make an image or something like that in Spark under the graphics side, you can bring those images and infographics right over to the web page side, or you can put those images in your videos. It's really pretty straightforward that way.
I think it's, again, like they've got several options. Like they've got templates for like they basically call it like Instagram posts and things like that. But in an education sense, it gives you the ability to kind of give a controlled environment where they create some of this information, and then insert it into like what, if I was going to use this, I'd maybe have them create some images, maybe a video, something like that. They can off of like Instagram posts, and then they could insert that into presentations, right? I feel like that would be an accurate way of saying like how we would probably lay out a activity, right? Like they put that into kind of a presentation type of feel.
And at my former institution, I had folks that kind of adopted it in any one of those lanes, to be honest. Like I had some public speaking courses and some marketing courses specifically adopt the graphics side. So and some psychology courses. So they used those graphics side to make like personas for public speaking. Like the students had to create a persona of who their audiences were. In the marketing thing, they had to just create graphics, like nice banners, nice images that might go on websites. In the psychology context, the students had to create infographics. So that was really cool to see that happen in those spaces. But I didn't have them adopt it in ways that usually overlapped the tools. I had 3 courses adopt the video component, and that was to create digital storytelling. So the students used Adobe Spark to create their own videos, and they had to follow a theme and create content according to what the parameters were. But I know in the Pages context, I had a faculty member use it really much like in that portfolio sense. Like it was an art history class, and the students had to pick their artist and then create a page that kind of gave the life and works of that artist. They didn't have to maybe do the whole artist, but they might pick like, you know, Van Gogh's early works, or, you know, stuff from ancient Rome artists, or stuff, you know, like they picked a segment and really stuck to it. So lots of options for how you can use those individually to support different learning activities. But you can also, like you're saying, you could use those things across each other and support each
other
other.
advantage that Adobe Spark has too is now I think it's only an iOS app right now if I remember correctly, but they also have a Adobe Spark app that you can use with your phone. And one of the reasons I mentioned this is because they have a really slick like video editor tool in it that's pretty easy to use. And so like for where I think this comes in handy, right, is that it allows students to quickly record video mobily on their phone. Mobily, that was a fun word. And
hey,
perfect. And record it straight from there and edit it and actually immediately upload it into projects they're already working on in Adobe Spark. Now, again, these are limited videos. They're like 30-second clips. But again, digital storytelling, if we're taking our leaning from like a social media world where, and a lot of this other place where digital storytelling is happening, it's a lot of like quick 30-second stories that combine together to create a larger story. So that 30-second video is not going to be your student's end all. It's going to be a little bit of a clip that builds into the larger thing that they're creating, in my mind, of what they're using in here. And the reason I think Adobe Spark works so well is because you could say, like, you could absolutely do this with like a PowerPoint or other tools. But one of the things that's just like, it's nice about Adobe Spark is that it's clean. Like, it's a really clean looking thing. And when we're talking digital storytelling, I gotta be honest, I don't want to click through multiple links on PowerPoint slides to other PowerPoint slides. I just don't. I'm sorry. And it's like Adobe Spark does a really good job of like giving that clean kind of modern feel to what they give, and giving students very easy tools to do that, whether they're pulling from a library of free images that they can find, or they're pulling templates that already exist for Instagram posts and they're just like editing those to create that image or story, or they're adding in, I think the Spark app that does video editing, you can even add in like text and stuff into the videos. Like you can add other elements into the video to kind of amplify that. And those are all things that when we're talking digital storytelling, those are things that should be a part of it, because that's what is available right now. That's why this concept that education, I think, is termed digital storytelling has become such a thing, because we have this happening in our social digital spaces a lot.
Following up there about what you said on the app, I did just do a quick search, and there is a version on the Android side, but it's limited. Okay. So the iOS app has more functionality. The Android app is specifically just the graphics tools and story templates. So Adobe's kind of that way. They almost always get ahead of the game with the iOS side, and then they'll backfill with the Android side over time. This is pseudo free. I don't even know if I want to call it freemium. So there's a free, it is freemium, I guess. There's a free app that you can get if you sign up with like, you know, a personal Adobe account, or if you log in through Facebook, or, you know, whatever your personal credentials are. It's pretty robust, I think, functionality wise. It's probably going to have some limits on size and what you can keep in there, but it very specifically does not have this branding suite of features. So there's some branding features in there that would let you set up like colors you want to use across all your images and stuff. It really would be from like a corporate experience. You don't get that on the free one. Not a big deal, right? If you want your students in there with a free one to make some content, it's not going to be an issue. They'll be able to kind of do the full scope. You might have to have them limit how much they create if there's size limitations, but it's not too bad. I did come from an institution that was using it globally. Right, we had Adobe Creative Cloud software license, so everybody had the premium one. But I know sometimes some students wouldn't kind of figure out the premium side, and they just use their free accounts anyway. So it's good to know that. There are going to be some accessibility concerns, right? They are creating almost exclusively multimedia in this platform. And I know from the interface I've used creating the multimedia, like the images, infographics, and stuff like that, It's not even great for a mouse at times. It really has gotten better. Like day one, it was not a great interface. I've probably been using it for 2.5 years, and it's gotten a lot better since then, but it's not going to be accessible. I really don't believe it is. It could be. I'd be surprised. But for a website, if you're not, just a little backfill of information here. If you're not familiar, if something is accessible, that means that every button and every element of the interface could be read by a screen reader. Or you could use your physical keyboard. You could use the tab button and the up and down arrows to navigate everything else that's on the web page. And I just really don't think you can do that and manipulate the images and stuff like that you would be moving around. So there's definitely some concerns if you need to be doing some accessibility things. But there's also an element where if you're trying to create visual media, I think that's an acceptable goal, where you might have to create an equivalent alternate learning plan for a student who couldn't do that. So you could definitely assign it, I think, for most of your students, and if you had an accommodation, find some way to support that student.
Yeah, I think we have that hurdle anytime you come to something like this, like with digital storytelling or multimedia projects, things like that. There's just only so much you can do to make it entirely accessible, which is fine. We find alternatives to what we're doing with, and even in digital storytelling, there's plenty of alternatives that you can find that you don't use Adobe Spark for somebody who can't use it. That'll still be a good project. Yeah, I think we'll run into that. I think overall, I can say from the free options, it's pretty nice. It's decent. Like we don't have Adobe Cloud across the entire institution that I'm at. So I have the freemium tool. It does good. It adds a little Adobe Spark watermark at the bottom of pretty much everything that I put in. But
okay.
it's I don't really care. I'm not taking this to
that wouldn't get in the way
it
of
would
an
get in
assignment.
the way of the assignment.
Like
So I don't really care that they do that. That's great. I just think it's an easy tool. It's pretty easy to get into, and the templates that they have allow for, I think, students who want to be super creative to like create a bunch of things. Students who maybe this is a little out of their comfort zone, the templates can help give them some roadmaps to how to make something look good.
Yeah.
So I think it's just I think it's a solid tool all around when it comes to something like this.
Every time I would demonstrate it in a class, there would definitely be 6 or 7/10 of the group, 60-70% of the group that would just like take the templates I was showing them and just start putting in their pictures, right, in their text. And then there'd be maybe 30% that'd be like, oh wait, so if I click on this and I move that, I can all right. And they start with a template and then just like redesign it on the spot. So it's flexible enough, I think, to meet the students where they are, which is one of the reasons I supported it and really pushed it for so long, because when it comes to ed tech, you can have the best tool, but if it doesn't get adopted, if the students won't use it,
yeah, that's true.
And this one, I consistently had students use it and use it effectively, without any big hurdles. So it's one that I keep coming back to, and I really do stand behind for how it helps students accomplish the task of digital storytelling.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's our app, guys. So I don't think we can say much more about it other than go try it out. Do some of those digital storytelling ideas, and make sure to let us know that you did them. If you're in a speech class and you implemented it, let me know. That's what I want to know. I want to know that somebody listened to us. That'd be cool. So thank you for joining us on another week of the High Tech Podcast, where we're just trying to harness that technology. You haven't caught that yet. That's our thing. Yeah. So he's like, wait, they keep saying that? Yeah, it's on our website too. Yeah, no.
And it's not even scripted.
No, but seriously, thank you for another week trying to harness that tech in our classrooms. We're enjoying it, and we'll see you later.
See ya.